There we go. When I was 13 years old, my best friend and I were standing in the kitchen, violently shaking a can of strawberry soda. We were 13 years old, and we had this brilliant idea to shake up a can of strawberry soda, puncture a hole in it, and try to drink it as fast as we could. Some of you laughing because you know. As soon as we punctured the hole, it exploded, dropped to the ground, and spun out of control. We were not expecting the can to explode. Our shock turned to laughter as pink, sticky strawberry soda dripped from the ceiling, down the counters, and all over us. Jessica's aunt walked in and said, "You better get this mess cleaned up before your mom comes in, or you're going to be in big trouble." The pressure which built up in that can is just like the pressure which builds up in us as business owners when we try to juggle it all without the right resources. Might end up exhausted, fatigued, have unexplained pain, headaches, health issues, maybe lacking motivation or feeling unfulfilled in what you're doing. This can look like lots of different ways. Burnout has a lot of different layers and lots of different reasons. And I have experienced this several times in my life. The first time is while I was working on my master's degree in sports psychology. Between work and school, I was working as an athletic trainer. I was going to school. I was putting in 70 hours a week. On top of it, I was newly married, and I was working with a volleyball coach who had an immense amount of pressure on him to have a winning season, which meant there was an immense amount of pressure on me to keep his athletes healthy and on the court. That led into a 14-year career of working with high-performing athletes, males, females, every sport you can name it besides wrestling. I don't do skin conditions. They gross me out. Sorry, wrestlers. And after 14 years and 2 babies, I was tired of not having my nights and weekends. I was tired of not having my time freedom and everybody having access to me 24/7. I took a leap of faith and I became a stay-at-home mom. And I thought that it was going to be cupcakes and rainbows and dinner was going to be on the table by 5. And I was one of those people, I don't know if any of you can relate to this that have kids, but I was like, I am the most present, peaceful mom in the world before I had kids, right? And then I had kids, and after 4 months of being a stay-at-home mom, I found myself at the kitchen table bawling my eyes out because I hated my life and I hated being a mom. And I just remember, like, God, you didn't give me these kids. You didn't give me this life for me to feel this way. Like, you promised joy and peace and happiness. And how do I get that? And I learned in that season that I was really good at taking care of everybody else as a healthcare provider. I was not good at taking care of myself. I didn't know how to take care of me. I didn't have the awareness of what I needed. And it affected my mental and my emotional health. And it affected the health of my kids. And I became really passionate about teaching other moms how important it was to take care of themselves. I started a gift box company. This is me when I launched my Kickstarter campaign. I raised $10,000 in a month. And after 3 years of that business, I found myself burnt out again. And so after this 3rd time of experiencing this burnout, I thought there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something different. And I decided that I no longer wanted to be a victim to my circumstances, just waiting for income or a new house or whatever it was to bring me happiness. And I decided to go internal and do the work that needed to be done. How many of you feel like a professional plate spinner? Right? You have to be mom, dad, wife, husband, CEO, HR, marketing, CEO, chef, chauffeur. And then we're supposed to fit self-care on top of all of it. The question is how do you know which plates to keep spinning and which ones to let go of? And so that is when I came up with the RAMP method, which I'm going to share in just a minute. But first, I want to know, where are you at on the burnout spectrum? So 1 is you feel like great, life and business is good, it's all good, everything's great. And 5 is like, you're like super crispy, well done, like ready to burn the business down, be done. Where are you at in that scale? And so I just want you to write that down or take a mental note. If you want to, please share. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but I would love to know where you're at just so I can kind of tailor this a little bit.
Is this specifically life or just business?
Both, because burnout has to do with both. And that's what happens is it's a lot of times in life, it's taking care of kids or aging parents or, maybe it's relationship issues. And then you have this business that you're trying to run on top of all of it. And it gets to be too much. And that's where burnout is not just one or the other usually. It's both. And so where are you at just in general?
Probably at a 3, but only
Okay.
because of life. Business are great.
Okay, so 3. Jeremy?
I put between 3 and 4.
Okay.
He's a 3.5.
I mean, because there's a lot of truth that like personal can affect business life, and then vice versa, and starting something new. There's a lot going on when you start a business. It seems like, especially once you start, and then a flood of things start coming in, which is good, but also like crap.
Well, and you've already been in the hustle. Like, even though you haven't been a business owner, you've been really doing the things of a business owner too. So coming to that. Diane, what about you?
I'd say 2.5, 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron?
Yeah, when you said on a scale of 1 to, I thought you were going to 10.
Yeah.
So immediately I said 7. 3.5.
Okay. Danica?
4.
Okay.
But I also was up, until 3 o'clock in the morning finishing a newspaper last
Ask
night.
her on
Oh,
Saturday.
I know them.
So-
Yeah, I was.
Right?
Yeah. And it can fluctuate depending on the day, the week, the month, the year. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. So
Right. He's thinking, I have a deadline right now.
yeah, it's and that's just it. And so I recognized after working with high performing athletes for 14 years that the athletes who became Olympic gold medalists or won the championships, they had 4 main components. 1, they had the right coach, they had to have the skill set, they had to have the mindset, and super crucial, they had to have the right rest to performance ratio. So the top 3, like, we can get those easily, right? But nobody really teaches us about rest and performance or how to juggle it all and keep them all the moving plates in the air. And one thing I want to point out, a lot of people, when they think about work-life balance and they hear that, how many of you are like, work-life balance doesn't exist? It's okay. You can be honest. Yeah. Because most people are thinking it's 50-50. You spend 50% of your time at work and 50% of your time in life, and that's not realistic. And in the sports world, they actually have a 3-to-1 rest to performance ratio. And we can apply that same principle to business. And just like Aaron mentioned, if we look at the earth and the seasons of farming, it's a 3-to-1 rest to performance ratio, right? The winter time is nothing's happening, the ground is resting, and then we start tilling the ground and planting the seeds and then growing it and then harvest, right? It's that same 3-to-1 rest to performance ratio. And so I thought, if this has been scientifically proven to work in the sports world, why can't we apply this to business? And so that's when I came up with the RAMP method. It's an acronym. It stands for Rest, Align, Master, Peak. And it's really a holistic approach that brings together life and business, and it optimizes your specific physiology and your business trends so you can be in peak performance at the right time instead of all the time. This you can apply to your day, your week, your month, and your year. But today we're going to talk about, like, what does this look like mostly in your year? The RAMP method is a framework that you can walk away with a roadmap, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But it's also the process that we go through. So typical way of scaling is that, like, feeling like you're in peak performance a majority of the time. How many of you feel like you're in peak performance, whether it's at home or at work? Do you feel like you're in peak performance most of the time? Don't you feel like you can rest and unplug and get away?
Oh, peak is
Peak.
you're working.
Peak means you're working or your brain is working. Like, whether it's physical work, mental work, emotional work.
Not just I'm at the top of my game.
Right.
Yes.
That's what some of us think about the peak. I'm at the peak. I'm at my best.
Yes.
Right.
Peak being like busyness. Peak being actively doing something, feeling like you're on all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is like, that's our typical business model. That's typical, like, working your way up the corporate ladder, anything, right? It's always up here. Even if you are sleeping or you take vacation, how many of you can really truly unplug? Jerry's shaking his head no. right? It's really hard to unplug, especially as a business owner when you're the income provider and you've got employees, all of those things. And so the ramp method, the whole goal of this is to provide a peaceful predictability and to help you to come up with, to provide a solution so you don't feel like you have to be here all the time, and we can work on being peak, being busy, being on at the right time, but also having rest. So how many of you are like, rest? I don't have time for rest. Anybody?
Yeah.
Feeling that? Yeah. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit of how to get out of that. But first, I just kind of want to get into the science. I don't want to get too sciencey, but this is what's called periodization training in sports. And so in sports, if we look at an Olympic swimmer, they have a 4-year training plan, which is a macro cycle. Those macro cycles are broken into mesocycles and microcycles. So a mesocycle would be a year or a month. And then we have microcycles, which is like a week, a day. And so you can see we have these peaks and these valleys. And so this is competition, right? They're peaking up, they're ramping up, and then they rest and they recover and they kind of go through this cycle. And so it's looking at when are the competitions. So to become an Olympic swimmer, let's say, you have to qualify and at certain competitions. They'll have pre-competitions that you qualify for any sort of championship. And so it's looking at what are the goals, what is the competition, and how do we set up the training and everything that we're doing, down to nutrition, down to rest, down to active, down to intensity of lifting. All of that is a part of their plan. And so in sports, there's different phases. So we have an off season, a preseason, an in-season, which is the competition phase. And then within that competition phase is the post or the peak season. So post or peak season is your NFL, Super Bowl, March Madness, going for the Olympic gold medal. And then they have active rest and they restore. And so it's this ebb and flow, right? And so this model is essentially what the ramp method is, and it's to teach you as a business owner how to apply this to your business and your life. So this is labeled Strategies for 10x Growth Without Burnout. I know Jeremy's read 10x is easier than 2x. Anybody else read that book? Okay. So the whole theory of this is it's just as easy to go for a 10x goal as it is a 2x goal. And when you think about 10x growth, so if you write down like your revenue goal for this year, or you think about it, and you were to 10x that, what comes up for you? What do you feel? What do you think? Feels impossible. What else? Somebody else? Apprehension, fear.
Not enough staff or hours in a day to do that.
Good. Yep.
24/7 operation. I mean, that's what it would be.
Yep. Yeah, and that is the thought process, right? Of like, oh my gosh, I'm already working. I can't work anymore. But the theory with 10x growth and how this works is you have to think a different way. You have to shift the way you do things and the way you think about things. So Dan Sullivan was a part of this book. This is actually his strategy. He has something that's called the Strategic Coach, and he's coached thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. And he says 10x requires operating in an entirely different way that bypasses the stresses and complications of a 2x goal. So why is that? And the theory behind this is if you try to double your goal, that's just working harder. But if you 10x your goal, so let's say your goal is 10K a month, and now we're going up to 100K a month, something has to be done differently. Hiring, right? It can't just be you. And as business owners, we get stuck in it being all us and wearing all the hats. And so it's thinking about who can I hire, who can I bring in to help get to this goal. So this is an example of Linda McKissack. I don't know if you are familiar with her, Danae, but this is, she's a realtor. She's really big in Keller Williams. Real estate mogul now, has opened several Keller Williams franchises. And her story was featured in 10X is easier than 2X. And she wasn't thinking like, oh, I want a 10X. But what happened for her is her first year in real estate, she only made $3,000 or something like that. And then she went to a conference and she realized that all of the successful realtors had assistants, they had team members, they had people that were helping them. And so she went back to her region and nobody had assistants and was not doing this. And she was like, I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to pay the assistant to take on my admin, but I'm just going to do it and I'm going to figure it out. And she did, which allowed her to work in her zone of genius. So she could focus on what she was really good at. And that's what helped exponentially growth. And she just continued to do that over the years. As a new opportunity came up that she wanted, she had to figure out, how do I let go? What do I let go of? And so part of the RAMP method teaches that and is our solution to that 10x growth. So I want you to think about, in your slow seasons, it doesn't matter what your industry is, every industry has a slow season. How do you feel in your slow season?
Anxious and sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like I know in my slow seasons I almost force it because you almost feel guilty for not doing anything.
Yep.
Like I'm not doing enough.
Anybody else feel that?
I feel like I have to work as hard in prospecting to get people for when my busy season isn't, so I go way too hard.
And that is what people do, right? That's our tendency, because it's that lack mindset. It's like the scarcity, it's the fear, it's the anxiety. What we want for your slow season is for you to feel rested and peaceful so that you have the energy when it comes time for your busier season. And then in your busy season, so that's what we refer to as peak, how do you feel in your busy season? Does it feel like organized and easy, or do you feel like you can barely keep your head above water?
That one.
Yeah. So the goal of this is we want it to feel peaceful, whether you are in your rest season or you are in your busy season. Does this always happen? No. Is it going to be 100% of the time? No. Right? Life happens, things happen, it is, but we do the best that we can. And so Lisa, Aaron's wife, who owns Northtown Insurance, like I said, she was the first one that I ever presented this to. And actually, before we started working together, I was having a hard time. She was scheduled to come to a retreat and she didn't come. And she messaged me and she said, Cheree, I know I need to be there, but I just couldn't. And I was like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about some coaching. But she was like, my calendar is managing me. Even coaching feels overwhelming. And I said, well, is everything on your calendar in alignment with your values and your priorities? And she said, no. And I said, well, why? And she said, because of people pleasing, saying yes to things, other people's obligations or expectations. And so that is what got her to start coaching. And this is when we introduced the RAMP method to her and to her team. So we knew we had these really slow months and it felt stressful. And then we'd panic about the busy time and we'd want to frantically hire, which we'll talk about. Do not hire in your busy season if you can avoid it. So she said, by implementing the RAMP method, it's brought us more productivity, unity, and the rest needed to stay energized. So let's talk about, what does this actually look like for the RAMP method? Some of you have the time. I just want to make sure time-wise where we're at.
52.
Okay, so we have, okay, perfect. So the rest season. So this is the equivalent to the off season in sports. In sports, it doesn't mean that they're couch potatoes and they're doing nothing. They're still swimming, they're still shooting hoops, they're still lifting, but it's at a lower intensity. In business, doesn't mean you're going to shut your business down. Maybe you're going to go on vacation. Maybe you can shut your business down, maybe not. The goal is for you to have people in place so that you can step away from your business. But it just means that you're being intentional about resting and having fun at home, work, life. So caution there. This is not the time to push for growth in this phase. I know that's what you want to do, but here's the thing. Are you going to force somebody to be in a buying mindset if they're not in a buying mindset? Are you going to have somebody buy a house when they're not in the mindset to buy a house, or buy insurance when they're not in the mind? You just can't force it, right? So how do we get our bodies to deep compress and let go of that have to, right? Because when you can let go, that actually a lot of times creates more opportunities. If you think about a hose and you squeeze it as hard as you can, because you're like, I want this water to come out, nothing comes out. And when you let it go and you release, the water flows, right? So how can we take that mindset in and allow rest in our season? And part of this is the process that we go through in coaching, is literally teaching you how to rest, because it's really hard as high achievers. So this is really the season for rebuilding, recharging, resetting the foundation. What worked well in your busy season? What didn't work well? Maybe who are you going to need to hire? What does this look like? We really want your family, your friends, and your relationships to be your biggest priorities in this phase because you don't have time in your busy season, right? So this is the time you get to do it. So I mentioned that the RAMP method is a framework and it's also the process we go through. So in the rest phase, when we're working with clients, we focus on a couple areas under the rest phase: rest and recovery, energy efficiency, sustainable self-care, and time management. One thing to think about with rest and recovery, if you think about doing bicep curls and you're doing like 80% max, super high intensity, right? And you're doing that because you're like, oh, I want to get really strong. The muscle, when you lift weights, there's little micro tears in the muscle. That's what makes the muscle bigger. But if you keep up that same intensity every single day, anybody know what happens? You know. What happens? It'll break. The muscle tears, completely tears. And so now you are like you didn't hit your goal and you have way more recovery time. So learning like what does rest and recovery look like for you as an individual? Because what my rest and recovery is totally different than everybody else's rest and recovery. And then one thing, I'm not going to go into depth on all of these, but energy efficiency, the one thing I want to talk about with this is a lot of people think like, oh, I just need to figure out better time management skills. I'm a proponent of learning how to manage your energy, not your time. As high achievers, we are really good at shoving as many things on our to-do list as we can. But if you can learn how to manage your energy better, that will serve you so much better. One way we teach this, and that's important to understand, is women are productive in a 28-day period. Men are productive in a 24-hour period. So understanding your physiology is really important with this and learning how to take advantage of that. And so you guys talked about like, I have days where I feel burnt out and I have days where I feel great. Part of that is the amount of work you've been doing, making sure you're getting enough recovery afterwards, but also understanding your body and where you are more productive in your day, your week, your month, your year. So we're going to do a quick little exercise. I talked about self-awareness. A lot of learning how to rest is becoming aware of your body. So I'm going to have all of you close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to think about something that's really stressful right now. Could be business, could be life. And I want you to identify where it's at in your body. Is it in your stomach, your chest, your neck? Take another deep breath in and out. And I want you to give it a name. Is it anxiety? Is it fear? What's the emotion behind it? You're going to take a deep breath in and exhale out, and you can open your eyes. What'd you notice?
Mine was in the base of my head. And then before you said define the name, I called it Larry.
Is there an emotion that's attached to it? I like that you have it and given it a name.
It's in my chest.
Chest?
Yeah.
What is it? What's the emotion?
I'm overwhelmed, like just lost, I guess.
That's good. Jeremy, what was it for you?
Oh.
Yeah, what was your emotion that you felt with it?
Fear.
Fear. Danica?
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
Frustration.
Frustration.
Not meeting my own expectations. Stating my expectations.
That's good. That's good awareness.
And it's here.
Your right side?
Oh, it's in my collarbone.
Very
I think
pinpointed.
because I was taking my anger out on a shovel about a month and a half ago, I was like, ah! Literally. And then I'm like,
Here's the
I don't know if I
interesting
forced
thing.
something or what.
Stress will make pain appear in your body. So if you were having pain or symptoms, that's a clue, like pay attention inside now. Like your body is yelling at you to pay attention. I used to have migraines. I still get migraines, but I used to get like 4 migraines a week, and I went to the naturopath and they said, food, a couple different things, and stress management. I was like, I'm not stressed. I feel fine. I'm great. I didn't know. I was literally holding my breath most of the time. I forgot how to breathe because I was just so stressed and anxious. And I was getting a lot of shoulder and neck tension. To me, it was normal. I didn't know. And so one of the ways to start to rest is understanding what causes your stress, what are your triggers, and how can you offset that? So if we come back to that like work-life balance, thinking about a scale of like, if you have too many stressors, that's what's going to start throwing you out of balance. So how can you rest and recover? What are the things you can do to bring you back in balance? That's where the sustainable self-care comes in, is learning ways to bring your body, because it's going to happen. You're going to get exhausted. You're going to burn out. You're going to have things. You just have to have enough awareness to figure out how to bring that back into equilibrium. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, so the align phase. So this is the equivalent to preseason in sports. So this is when the teams are coming back together. They're working on foundational skills. They're learning how to work as a team and who is going to be in what position. In business, this is your planning and prep phase. To really have success and fulfillment, because a lot of times we chase the success for fulfillment, but to have success and fulfillment together, you and your team need to be in alignment with your zone of genius, which I'll talk about in just a second. So in this phase, we really want to get you in alignment with your vision, your values, your priorities. This is a great time to do team building, strategy planning, goal setting. In the workshop that I'm going to be talking about, we're pretty much going to be focusing on these things to create your entire RAMP method. Because in order to have true rest, you need to be in alignment. You can't have one really without the other. And firm boundaries. How many of you have a hard time with boundaries? Like if you go home and you're supposed to be present with your family, but you're attached to your phone because you got to respond.
Okay,
Yeah. So part of that is getting clear on what your values and your priorities are, and learning little tips and tools and things you can do to keep those boundaries in place. So let's just talk about vision for a second. What if you could 10x your business growth and get back more time? Who would raise their hand for that? Yeah. What if you could be more productive and more present at the same time? Yep. And then what would you have to do differently to make that happen?
Lock my office door.
Yeah.
Like step away. It's the culmination of to-do items, and I try to use technology for organization, but I still have like to-do items that carry from one day to the next, and then by the end of the week there's another stack, and it's like, okay, now I have to resort and reprioritize. So it becomes just overwhelming.
Yeah. One of the things when we talk energy efficiency, I had a client, Heather, and one of the ways we go over energy is I have them write down everything on there that they do on a weekly, monthly, daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then they have to rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. And so for her, one of the things that it wasn't really energy draining for her, but it wasn't energy giving was social media. But she was like, but I'm really at inventory. I mean, she was doing all kinds of crazy things she didn't need to be doing. But she's like, but I'm really good at it and it's easy. Like, why would I do it? And I'm like, but if you have a cup of water and you spill a little cup of water on social media and on managing employees and on taking care of your clients and on ordering inventory, right? Like eventually that water gets to the bottom and there's no water left for you. There's no time left for you. And so learning how to prioritize yourself first to take care of because you only have one body, right? There's only one you. You cannot be replaced. And so how do we make that the priority and shift that? And doing things differently like that, learning what to outsource, automate, delegate, learning how to let go of things, that's a part of it. So I want you to think about your vision. If you are established in business, I want you to think about what your original vision was when you went into business and ask yourself, is that where you're at? Is that vision, are you in alignment with that vision, or have you gotten out of alignment with that? And if you're just starting business, newer, what is your vision? So vision could be your revenue goal. And then also, like, why did you start your business? Like, what did you start it for? Because we all started it for a reason, right? A lot of times we think it's the money, but is it really the money we're chasing after? What are we chasing after?
It's, for me, it's just being a resource to my clients, helping them be successful in whatever their challenges are. But the challenge is that people go back to old habits. And just like you're addressing right now, I mean, it's like, how do I, when my feet hit the ground in the morning, instead of going into the office with a cup of coffee, why don't I walk out the door and do my exercise first? Because by 10 o'clock, it's not done.
Yeah. And I like that you brought that up, because usually if you find yourself hitting the same wall over and over, there's some sort of limiting belief. There's some sort of like deeper layer there that has to be worked through. And so part of this is what we do in our one-on-one coaching. This won't be a part of the workshop, but it's digging in of what is it that's keeping you from that. Is it really the to-do list? We think it's to-do list. It might be the to-do list, but a lot of times there's a lot of other things involved too. So I want you guys just to get kind of just write this down. I'm just going to give you like a minute, and I want you to write down, just brain dump. It could like feel impossible. Like, what do you want from your business? How do you want it to support your life? Like, do you want to be present with your family? Do you want to be able to unplug from your phone? What's your revenue goal? Like, I want you to think like holistically and just write it down. Just brain dump anything that comes to your mind.
That's one of mine. All that stuff I already had figured out.
You already got it? You already got
Oh,
yours?
yeah.
Perfect. While they're writing, Jeremy, do you want to share?
Yeah, so my revenue goal is actually pretty, I set the bar pretty low, but it's more tiered. So I'd like to just be able to be in a place where I'm adding about 1,000 more a month. So by the end of the year, if I add 12,000 more from what I currently do with Wise Shopper, that's a good thing. Ultimately, I'd like it to eclipse it, but low bar for year one, so it's not too big of a stress, but we can go about it. And then essentially starting the businesses. I mean, when you work in advertising, you work in marketing, you come across a lot of small businesses, and a lot of them, like what we're talking here, you think from the outside perspective, you think, they're millionaires, they're doing this, and that, but really a lot of them are nine to five employees that never get a clock off, and they're just doing what they can to support their family, their friends, the community.
Yeah.
And so as a marketer, if I can come in and actually be a real person to them rather than just like, hey, I'm just trying to sell you on this just so I can get you to sign so I can pad my pockets. I wanted to start it to be a resource to say, hey, no, you don't need to do this. You can start here, and this will get you from here to here to here. So
With your goal of just 1,000 extra a month, what is that going to do for you personally and for your family?
it'll definitely make things a lot less scary each month as far as with bills and income.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And what's the advantage of being your own business owner versus going to get a job?
You can start to finish, you can set the tone of what you want. I mean, if you're working for someone, there's only so much you can do to define the culture of what's taking place. You can only define so much about what's charged, why it's charged, certain things like that. You have more control of like, okay, well, I'll take care of you because I understand your situation. I'm just going to take care of you, take care of you. I think you have a lot more control to do things the way you want.
So a couple of things I hear in there: financial freedom, fulfillment, right? To do things the way that you want to be able to do them, the freedom to do it how you want. And then there's usually a third one, which is time freedom. And why do we want time freedom? Like, what does the financial freedom do? Ideally, it should provide us the time freedom, right? But what I find what happens with a lot of business owners is we set this revenue goal and we chase it, but we forget, like, but why did I do this in the first place? I want to spend more quality time with my family. One of the questions I ask clients when they're coming in is, if you had 1 year left to live, what would you do differently? And that I asked that question, what'd you say?
Quit.
Most people say that, right? And it's like, I would travel, I would spend more time with my family. And so that really highlights what you actually value. But we still have to make money. So how can we make money and still make sure that those things we value are a priority? So that's the goal of the RAMP method. And so when you think about vision, we're not going to spend much more time on this, but I want you to start to think bigger of like, what do I actually want my days to look like? Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? How do I want to spend time with my family, and not just that business goal? Because chasing that revenue goal is what will lead to burnout a lot of times. So when we talk about staying in alignment, I mentioned zone of genius. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly. Have any of you read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks? You know, Erin, you have. This is a great book. So there's 4 zones. Zone of incompetence is you don't understand or you don't have the skills. Zone of competence, you're okay at it, but others can do it better. Zone of excellence is you're extremely skilled at it, but don't enjoy it. And zone of genius, you would do it all day, every day, if you could. And where I find that business owners get stuck, zone of competence, that's easy to pay somebody to do, right? Because you can't do it yourself. Zone of competence, you're okay at it. You're more willing to outsource it and let go of that money. Zone of excellence is where people get stuck. So when I talked about my client Heather not wanting to let go of social media, she was like, but I'm really good at it and I don't mind doing it. Like, why would I pay somebody? And I'm like, because you can pay a social media manager $25 an hour and you can go out and get a client that brings in potentially $400 a month, right? So business owners get stuck here in the zone of excellence, and they get zone of excellence confused with their zone of genius. And then when we talk about staying in alignment as a team, I'm not going to go in depth on this. I just wanted to kind of highlight it. We talk about 6 types of working geniuses. And so we will come in with business owners who have teams and do this. We actually did this at Northtown Insurance. If you have not read that book, it's a great book as well. Just teaching you kind of along the same lines as Zone of Genius, but talks about it in a different way.
6 types of what, working genius?
Yep, 6 types of working genius. It's a book by Pat Lencioni. I can never say his name the right name. Thank you. I was like, Laconi? I can never say it right. I think you and I had talked about that. Okay, so then the master phase. So this is equivalent to in season in sports. So this is the competition phase. They already have the skill set. They know what position they're playing. Now it's about mindset. And I cannot tell you how many times I have watched teams be in a championship game and they're super nervous because their focus is on not losing. But because it's one and done, right? So if they lose, their season is done. But leading up to that, going into every game, their focus is on winning and what they can control. If fear is driving your decisions, if you are afraid to let go in your slow season, you will start making decisions from fear, right? So for athletes, you can see it in their bodies when they're afraid to lose. They become frantic, they become reactive. It physically changes their body and how they're moving. And so this happens to us as business owners too, right? The fear, the anxiety, they start to take over and control, and it's important to be able to like hone in on those and know and just have that awareness and be able to shift it. This is also where we get really clear on what goes on your calendar and what doesn't. This is the start of your busy season where other priorities are intentionally removed so you can continue to ramp up. So when I talked about Lisa, we looked at her calendar and completely changed what was allowed on her calendar and what wasn't, so that when she moved into that busy season, she was in a better place. Operational efficiency we focus on here, and then communication, whether that's with your team, with your family, because your family is a part of your team, right? All of that becomes really important. So if you think about your vision that you wrote down, is your calendar in alignment with that vision and your values and your priorities? Jeremy's shaking his head no. Danae's kind of shaking her head no. So I'll come back to this in just a minute. We already talked about that. So peak phase, this is equivalent to the peak season. So post competition. So like I mentioned, Super Bowl, going for the Olympic gold medal, those kind of things. It's the after their original competition. But this is actually where we want athletes to peak and be at their peak performance, their best. So if they're training down to weightlifting, nutrition, their training plan throughout the year, practices, games, if it's not done right, they will either peak too soon and they won't make it to March Madness or make it through March Madness, or they'll peak too late or they'll end up burnt out and injured. And so it's a fine science. It's truly a science that's been used for 60 years to develop Olympic gold medalists, that this works. And so it's all about making sure that you're doing the right things at the right time so you can be in peak performance to really take care of your clients and yourself really well. This is not the time to hire. If you've gone through the RAMP method, we should already know when you're going to be hiring and when you're going to be onboarding. Sorry, Danae, am I in your way? So this is the busiest time of your year. It's usually the growth phase. Your business is your main priority, income generation focused. Doesn't mean that you're not income generation focused in other seasons, but it just means this is when it's naturally coming in. And so how can we make sure that you have done everything you possibly can so you can just hit the ground running and be ready to go? So main focus in this phase is generating revenue, really serving your clients and customers, delegate to elevate, and having really firm boundaries, which we will have already worked up to this point. So bottom line, what might feel chaotic and stressful will become peaceful and predictable. That is our goal. How many of you value your peace? Yeah, how many of you value your joy and your happiness, right? So if we value that, how can we protect that? And that's where we talk about, just really getting clear on your values. So just a recap, to really 10x your growth without burnout. And I want to bring this back because Jeremy, you said just $1,000 a month. And here's why, instead of thinking small, like if you think bigger, because if you think bigger, guess what? You're going to hit your small goal. If you think small, you're going to be really working and hustling hard. And so whether you hit that 10x goal or not doesn't matter. It just changes the way you do things and how you think about things and what you're maybe willing to do differently. So create a 10x vision. So I'm going to challenge you, and probably every one of you, I didn't hear the rest of yours, make it bigger. Because if it feels impossible, Danae, you had said, if I think about 10xing my vision, it feels impossible. It should feel impossible. We want it to feel like it's really hard, because it's going to make you think like, what would I have to do differently? What would I be willing to do differently? Whether you can actually do it right now or not. But it just helps you to think a different way and think bigger. Like, oh, if I were to bring in an admin, what would that allow me to do? And could I go out and bring in more revenue? And so it's just thinking different. It's really about doing less, not more. And then figure out your zone of genius, because that's how you're going to know who to hire and bring in to support you. And even collaboration. It doesn't even have to be a hire. It could be collaborating with another business owner. Finding the right who's, same thing. And then creating a RAMP roadmap, which I'm going to share with you how you can do that. So this is just kind of a recap of everything that we've talked about today and each of the phases. So 2 ways that you can create your RAMP roadmap with me is we have a Work Smart, Live Well workshop coming up in 2 weeks here, and then or personalized coaching. So how do you know which one you fit into? The workshops are great if you are under a 3 on that 1 to 5 scale and you are less than 3 years in business. This will be great for you. If you are a 3 or above, especially if you're like at a 4 or 5, and you've been in business for at least 2 years, if not 3, then personalized coaching is a better option. And the reason is because it just takes more work. It takes more depth. Just creating a RAMP method might not be what you need. If you're not sure, we could have a conversation about it, and I'll tell you where you would best fit. But with the workshop, let me see if this will pull up. I'm going to show you what you're going to walk away with. Oh, good, it did pull up. So this is actually an example of a RAMP roadmap for one of our clients who owns Legacy Insurance. So in this and in the workshop, we're going to get really clear on what is your vision, what are your values and priorities, what are your revenue goals, and then what do your seasons look like. So for this, she has one rest phase in November through December, Align January through March, Master April, May, a second rest phase in May, and then another peak phase in June through October. So this is actually another property casualty insurance company. Their ramp method is totally different than Northtown Insurance's ramp method. Same insurance, different, because they're different people, they're different businesses. So what we do is we go through each of these phases and we get really clear on what is your intention and main focus in each of these. What are you doing for client appreciation, team appreciation? How are you resting at work and at home? What's your marketing plan in that season? Because we talked about, like, yes, you don't need to go out and hustle. We want you to rest in your rest phase. Doesn't mean you can't still market. You might just be marketing in a different way. So what does that look like? And then we go down even to, if you have team members, what's the business owner's goal? This is insurance, so they have account managers, producers, like what are each of their goals in each of these seasons? What's getting outsourced and offloaded? And that just goes through all of these. So each phase is different in what the focus is. Oops, did we come back? So Heather, who owns Legacy Insurance, I have a lot of people that come up and they're like, Cheree, this is life-changing. I'm like, great, what's life-changing about it? So we started doing a survey before we started working with our clients and after, so we could have tangible results. And so for her, she had a 60% increase in peace and communication with her employees. When I started with Heather, she was at the point, she literally wanted to burn her business down and sell it off. Like, she was just done. She was having lots of staff issues, lots of different things going on. She was having a hard time being present at home. Her husband was getting frustrated. And so just wanted to kind of be clear of where she was before. 80% in increase in energy and productivity. And she was 100% satisfied with the ramp method. And our agency owner to CEO program, that's specific for insurance agents, but we have owner to CEO programs for other business owners as well. So I mentioned this already, every ramp method will look different. So the workshop is 2 hours in person on the 24th, 12 to 2 right here. And we're gonna work through and create your ramp method. But we're gonna do 2 bonus hours. So we're actually gonna meet virtually next week on Wednesday, 12 to 1:30, because we're going to get really clear on what is your vision, what are your values and your priorities, and what is your zone of genius. When we have that, then we can create a really solid ramp method. And then we're going to do a post workshop. So after the in-person workshop, I'm going to meet with each person individually one-on-one, just to make sure that your ramp method is good, you don't have any questions, and we're actually going to create it for you, just like we did for Legacy Insurance. If you have team, we usually create 2. We create one for the business owner and one to present to the team. I don't think you might have team, Danica, but no. Okay, a lot of you are single, so that won't apply to you guys, so you guys will just have one. But really the goal is to help you to be more productive, more profitable, and more present for the things that are important for you. Questions? I know that was a lot of information.
It was good though.
So all of those were an annual ramp method. I guess I don't see how that fits into, maybe it doesn't fit into his business model either. For I have a deadline every 2 weeks.
Yeah, so
do you customize that for
yep.
I have a 2-week cycle
Yep.
versus a year?
Yep. Yeah, and so that's the thing with the ramp method. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's really specific to your business and your business trends and what makes sense for you. So if that's on a 2-week cycle, I would say even within a year, you still have a 1-year plan, right? There's quarters, there's, and so that's why it's not just 4 seasons. It could be, you could have 8 different seasons, right?
I'm
and
looking at those, seeing the rest cycles, and I'm like, yeah, but every 2 weeks I still have 3 days of a deadline.
Yeah.
So my brain goes to there's still only one time a year that I can take more than a 2-day vacation. I
Yeah.
don't have anybody to delegate to.
I was gonna say, and part of that is like, are you not able to delegate because you don't have the finances to delegate? Is it so? There's
It's kind
like
of
lots
a
of
mix
different.
of things, but I mean, we've owned the company for almost 10 years now,
Oh wow.
and the community doesn't want to deal with anybody but me and Ben. And so that kind of has ended up being everything is me and Ben because the other business owners in the community only want to deal with me.
Yeah, and part of that, so it challenged you that there is a way. It's just a matter of figuring it out
Sure.
and working through that. And part of that is like that's harder to do with just a workshop because that does take some digging in and figuring out like what does this look like and getting really clear on like your big picture and how you operate and all of that stuff. Does it mean that you can't do the workshop? No, like you could still do the workshop. It's just a matter of like how much transformation do you want? Like what do you really want and where you want to go? And so that might be like better as just a conversation to have. But I would challenge you, any of you, does not matter what industry you are. I promise that this can work for you. And it's just figuring out a way to make it work for you. And make it customizable to make sense for you. And even like realtors, like we did this presentation at Keller Williams. And for them, they were like, I think I would make more sense for me to do this in a day and like in a week instead of like a grand scheme of a year. I like the year plan mostly because it gives you kind of a roadmap of where to go, even down to like marketing strategies and what are you doing, what are you not. So it gets that big picture. And then how do we take that and bring it down into a month, a week, and a day. For a 2-week cycle, or if you have 3 days, your 3-to-1 rest to performance ratio, right? Like you're on for 3 days solid. Like you're just not going to change that. It sounds like, and that's okay. So what rest and recovery are you going to do on either side of that, either before or after? And what does that look like? Yeah, go for it. So yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for sponsoring this.
About Northtown or our experience with the ramp.